There are moments in life when nothing is wrong, yet nothing is clear. You pray, but you cannot see. You try to move, but you cannot tell where to step. Opportunities stand around you like shadows without shape. Directions feel blurred. Discernment feels distant. This is not confusion, this is a fog. A spiritual haze placed over your destiny to keep you wandering without sight, without accuracy, without speed. But tonight, the wind of God is rising. Every destiny fog that settled over your path, every atmospheric veil covering your spiritual eyes, and every haze blocking your clarity, shall clear by fire. There are forces assigned to blur the vision of those who are called, not by destroying their path, but by hiding it, not by closing their door, but by making the door invisible. Fog is not an attack against distance. Fog is an attack against sight. When the spirit of fog surrounds your destiny, you no longer trust your own discernment. You no longer recognize divine signals. You struggle to interpret dreams. You misread seasons. You walk slowly in moments you should run. You hesitate in moments you should strike. And you pause at the edge of opportunities because the path ahead looks blurred. There are people who were meant to rise earlier, but a fog settled over their journey. They kept moving, but without direction. They kept praying, but without clarity. They kept trying, but without revelation. They were not weak. They were not unspiritual. They were not lazy. A fog was at work, environmental, atmospheric, invisible, yet deeply disruptive. And every time they tried to make progress, the fog thickened. Every time clarity approached, the mist rose again. Every time breakthrough was near, a spiritual haze blurred the final step. But tonight, that fog is breaking. Spiritual fog is one of the most dangerous invisible battles because it does not stop you outright, it slows you. It delays you. It blinds you gently. It keeps you walking in circles while thinking you are going straight. It makes you revisit old seasons. It makes you return to old doors. It makes you reconnect with people God ended. Fog makes you misjudge what is good and misunderstand what is harmful. Fog creates spiritual illusions and then traps you in them. That is why, tonight, this atmosphere must shift. There are destinies that were supposed to be clearer by now. You were meant to understand your assignment by this stage. You were supposed to recognize your helpers by this season. You were meant to discern the voice of God with sharper sensitivity. But something came between you and the light. Something dimmed the clarity of your spirit. Something pulled a mist over your spiritual sight. Something made what was once obvious now feel distant. And that something is breaking tonight. You can feel when the fog is not natural. You can sense when the haze is not coming from your mind, but from a spiritual projection. When you suddenly lose direction for no reason, when your sense of spiritual visibility drops without warning, when you feel like you're standing in a room filled with smoke, yet nothing is burning. That is when you know the fog is not psychological, it is atmospheric. There are fogs sent from altars, fogs sent from jealous hearts, fogs released through dreams, fogs stirred through manipulation, fogs assigned through monitoring spirits, fogs projected by those who fear your clarity. Because clarity is power, clarity is movement, clarity is speed, clarity is accuracy, clarity is breakthrough. And when the enemy wants to delay a destiny he cannot stop, he fogs the path, he dims the lights, he thickens the air until you can no longer see where God is pointing. But hear this tonight. Every spiritual climate that has been masking the road ahead of you is about to shift. Every environmental manipulation that has settled upon your mind is about to dissolve. Every haze that has been whispering confusion into your decisions is about to be burned away. The Spirit of God is releasing wind to scatter, wind to clear, wind to expose, wind to restore visibility. Where there was mist, there shall be clarity. Where there was blur, there shall be accuracy. Where there was hesitation, there shall be confidence. There are seasons when God does not give you a new blessing. He removes what has been blocking your sight. The blessing was already there. The opportunity was already open. The answer was already prepared. But you could not see through the fog. You could not locate what belonged to you. You could not recognize what God positioned for you. That is why tonight is not just a night of deliverance. It is a night of illumination. The fog targeted your spirit because your next step is important. The haze covered your vision because your next decision is destiny-changing. The mists surrounded your path because the enemy fears what you will see when the air clears. He fears what you will recognize when your eyes open. He fears what you will walk into when the visibility returns. But tonight, God is clearing the air around you. There are destinies that shift the moment clarity returns. You begin to see patterns you never noticed. You begin to discern voices you once trusted. You begin to identify traps that once looked harmless. You begin to understand why certain cycles repeated. Clarity exposes what the fog tried to hide. Clarity reveals the hands behind the confusion. Clarity uncovers the altars behind the delays. Clarity shows you what was working against you in secret. And tonight, that clarity is coming back to you. When the atmosphere is foggy, even open doors look closed. Opportunities look risky. Helpers look suspicious. Warnings look harmless. The fog rearranges your perception, twisting what is real into something uncertain. It is difficult to move boldly when everything looks blurred, and that is exactly what the enemy wants. If he cannot remove your door, he will remove your ability to see it. If he cannot block your path, he will block your visibility. If he cannot stop your rising, he will weaken your certainty. But tonight, your eyes are clearing. Every destiny fog has an origin. Some come from ancient covenants. Some rise from family altars. Some emerge from dream manipulations. Some are stirred by people who fear your rising. Some are released by environments you outgrew. Some attach themselves through spiritual exhaustion. That is why the fog feels heavy. That is why it lingers even when you pray. That is why it settles, even when you fast. Because fog is not an event. It is an atmosphere, and atmospheres must be confronted, not tolerated. There are fogs that enter through disappointment. There are fogs that enter through betrayal. There are fogs that enter through emotional wounds. There are fogs that enter through prolonged stagnation. The enemy knows if your heart becomes heavy, your spirit becomes cloudy. If your mind becomes weary, your discernment becomes slow. If your hope becomes dim, your vision becomes narrow. That is how fog spreads silently, gently, gradually, until your inner world becomes blurred. But tonight, the weight is lifting. Some people do not understand why you hesitated in seasons where others were running. They do not understand why you paused when opportunities arose. They do not understand why you felt uncertain about decisions that looked obvious. They judged you because they saw your steps, but they did not see your atmosphere. They saw your movement, but they did not see your fog. They didn't know you were fighting an invisible haze that dimmed your spiritual accuracy. But tonight, that battle ends. There are fogs that make you mistrust the voice of God. You begin to doubt dreams that once guided you. You begin to question instructions that once strengthened you. You begin to second-guess insights that once came easily. You begin to think you are drifting, when in reality, the fog is what shifted. And when you cannot trust what you see, you start relying on emotions. But emotions are unstable. Emotions fluctuate. Emotions are easily manipulated. That is why the enemy tries to fog your spirit, to push you out of revelation and into feeling. But tonight, revelation is returning. Some of the greatest delays in life are caused by fog, not by failure. You were not fighting a blocked destiny. You were fighting a blurred one. You were not stuck. You were surrounded by haze. You were not lost. You were navigating without visibility. And just like a traveler on a misty road must reduce speed, your destiny slowed down because your eyes could not see ahead. But the fog is clearing now. Your speed is coming back. Your accuracy is awakening. Your movement is about to shift. There are signs that the fog is breaking. Suddenly you begin to sense things again. Suddenly your spirit becomes alert. Suddenly your dreams sharpen. Suddenly scriptures speak louder. Suddenly you feel direction pulling you. Suddenly you sense divine alignment returning. Those moments are not emotional highs. They are prophetic indicators that the fog is thinning. And tonight, the full clearing begins. You cannot rise in a fog. You cannot build in a haze. You cannot choose destiny-altering paths when visibility is low. That is why God must clear the spiritual atmosphere around you before he brings you into your next season. He's not delaying your blessing. He's restoring your sight. He's not withholding answers. He's removing the haze so you can see the answers clearly. This is not abandonment. This is preparation. When the fog lifts, the path becomes obvious. Choices become simple. Decisions become quick. Discernment becomes sharp. You stop hesitating, you stop wondering, you stop questioning, you stop overthinking. Your inner compass recalibrates. Your spiritual senses realign. You begin to see what God has been showing you all along. And that clarity is coming upon your life tonight with fire. There are destinies that only require one thing to shift visibility. The resources are there. The helpers are there. The connections are there. The grace is there. The opportunities are there. What was missing was sight. What was missing was clarity. What was missing was revelation. But after tonight, nothing will remain hidden. Nothing will remain blurred. Nothing will be fogged. Your spirit will see with precision again. There are battles that do not attack your strength, but your sight. When vision is compromised, even the strongest become slow. When clarity is missing, even the gifted walk timidly. When direction is blurred, even the anointed hesitate. The enemy is not afraid of your talent, your potential, or your calling. He is terrified of your clarity, because once you see well, you move well. Once you discern well, you choose well. Once your spiritual eyes open, the plans of darkness collapse. The fog did not come to weaken your power. It came to weaken your perception, because perception determines movement. When a fog settles over your destiny, you begin to misinterpret seasons. You feel warfare when God is opening a door. You feel peace when danger is near. You feel ready when you should wait. You feel delayed when divine timing is aligning. Fog confuses interpretation. And when interpretation is wrong, direction becomes dangerous. That is why clarity is a weapon. And tonight, that weapon is being restored to you. There are people who walked away from blessings simply because fog made the blessing look ordinary. There are people who embraced wrong relationships because fog made danger look safe. There are people who rejected divine instructions because fog made obedience look uncertain. There are people who abandoned their assignment because fog made their calling feel foreign. You are not the only one who has ever struggled to see. Many destinies were almost lost, not because the path was closed, but because their visibility was stolen. Fog does not stop movement. Fog stops understanding. It makes you act without confidence, speak without conviction, pray without direction, fight without strategy. You move, but you move blindly. You pray, but you pray vaguely. You work, but you work without divine timing. Fog steals precision. And when precision is gone, progress becomes slow. But tonight, your precision is being restored. The atmosphere around you determines the clarity within you. This is why certain environments feel heavy. This is why some environments drain revelation. This is why certain people carry confusion with them. They do not attack you directly, but their presence introduces a fog into your spirit. Your peace feels unsettled. Your thoughts feel crowded. Your inner stillness feels disturbed. And you begin to wonder why you cannot think clearly. But it is not you, it is the atmosphere. And that atmosphere is breaking now. There are destinies that stagnate because the fog convinces them that nothing is changing. You cannot see growth, so you assume there is none. You cannot see progress, so you conclude that you are stuck. You cannot feel movement, so you believe you are still. But fog deceives perception. It hides what God is doing behind the scenes. It makes divine processes feel like silence. It makes spiritual advancement feel like stillness. And many people give up right at the moment when the fog was about to lift. Fog also hides enemies. It conceals motives. It masks intentions. You cannot see who is for you and who is against you. You cannot discern who is carrying oil and who is carrying poison. You cannot tell who is a helper and who is a monitor. Fog hides faces behind friendly smiles. Fog hides agendas behind kind words. Fog hides traps behind opportunities. And that is why tonight, your sight must be restored, because not everyone standing close to you stands with you. The enemy uses fog to introduce spiritual collisions. Decisions that should be easy become complicated. Paths that should be straight become confusing. Assignments that should be joyful feel heavy. Warfare that should be small feels overwhelming. The fog magnifies the wrong things and minimizes the right things. You begin to chase distractions and ignore divine signals. You begin to prioritize noise and overlook revelation. You begin to run after what drains you and neglect what feeds you. Fog distorts discernment until your priorities become misaligned. But when God clears fog, everything reorders itself. The right people become visible. The wrong people become exposed. The path becomes sharp. The voice of God becomes clear. The atmosphere becomes light. Your heart becomes steady. Your decisions become wise. You stop surviving and start advancing. You stop guessing and start knowing. You stop wandering and start walking with precision. There are seasons when God allows fog to show you what is inside you. Fog reveals whether you walk by sight or by faith. Fog exposes if you trust God or trust clarity. Fog tests whether your obedience depends on visibility or conviction. Some breakthroughs require a faith that sees even when eyes cannot. And sometimes fog comes to refine that faith. But once the lesson has been learned, God clears the air so you can move with confidence again. And your clarity is returning with force. Tonight, the wind of the Spirit is blowing. Not a gentle breeze, but a cleansing wind. A wind that removes what has been hovering around your destiny. A wind that pushes away every veil. A wind that scatters every haze. A wind that restores your sight. You will wake up tomorrow with a different understanding. You will walk into the coming days with a sharper sense of direction. You will hear God with clarity. You will discern danger without confusion. You will recognize opportunities without hesitation. There are moments in life where God does not remove the challenge. He removes the fog around the challenge. Because sometimes the problem is not the battle itself, but your inability to see the strategy for the battle. When visibility returns, the things that once intimidated you suddenly look small. The issues that once overwhelmed you reveal their weakness. The mountains that seemed immovable show their cracks. Fog magnifies fears. Clarity reduces them. And tonight, clarity is returning to you like a rising dawn. The spirit of destiny fog does not only hide the road ahead, it also hides the progress behind you. You do not see how far you have come. You do not recognize the growth that has already taken place. You do not perceive the victories you've already won. You underestimate the strength God has built within you. Fog blinds you to your own progress. But as the haze lifts, you will see that you are not where you used to be. You will recognize that you have been advancing even when you felt stuck. You will discover that God has been moving even when you could not see. There are atmospheres that were designed to confuse your spirit so you would rely on your senses instead of revelation. When fog is thick, people lean on what they can feel instead of what they know. They follow emotions instead of instruction. They embrace fear instead of faith. Fog tries to push you out of spiritual truth and into sensory confusion. But tonight, that connection is being severed. Your spirit is taking back leadership. Your discernment is regaining authority. Your inner compass is rising again. Fog attacks timing. When you cannot see clearly, you either rush ahead or fall behind. You move too early out of anxiety or too late out of hesitation. Timing becomes unstable. Decisions become unbalanced. Opportunities slip because the fog made their timing unclear. But when God clears the haze, divine timing begins to realign. You step when you are meant to step. You pause when you are meant to pause. You accelerate when the season calls for acceleration. The days of misalignment are ending. There are people who carry fog with them. Their conversations create confusion. Their presence alters your peace. Their opinions cloud your direction. Their energy blurs your discernment. They speak lightly, but their words weigh heavily. They carry atmospheres of uncertainty that settle into your spirit. When they leave, you feel drained. When they speak, you feel unsettled. When they advise you, you feel confused. These are carriers of fog, and tonight, every such influence is being removed from your path. The fog also affects your dreams. What should be clear becomes scattered. Divine messages come in fragments. Spiritual warnings come distorted. Directions come blurred. Instead of instruction, you see shadows. Instead of revelation, you see symbols that feel unfamiliar. Fog attacks the dream realm because dreams are the eyes of the spirit. And if your spiritual eyes are fogged, your path becomes vulnerable. But tonight, the dream realm is being restored to clarity. You will begin to see with accuracy again. Fog also affects prayer. When the haze is thick, prayer feels heavy. Revelation feels distant. Scripture feels quiet. Worship feels dry. The presence of God feels far, not because God is far, but because fog blocks perception. You are praying, but you cannot sense the shift. You are seeking, but the atmosphere around you feels sealed. You are knocking in, but it feels like the door is behind a veil. This is spiritual atmospheric warfare, and tonight you are coming out of it. When God clears fog, the first thing that returns is inner peace. Your spirit stops feeling crowded. Your heart stops feeling restless. Your thoughts stop feeling tangled. Your decisions no longer feel dangerous. You suddenly find yourself breathing differently, thinking differently, moving differently. That is the sign the atmosphere has shifted. And for you, that shift begins tonight. There are breakthroughs that did not require more fasting or more praying. They required clearer sight, because what was stopping you was not spiritual opposition, but spiritual obscurity. You could not fight what you could not see. You could not attack what you could not identify. You could not rebuke what you could not recognize. Fog hides the enemy. Clarity exposes him. And once exposed, he loses power. Tonight, exposure is coming upon everything that has been hiding around your destiny. Some people feel lost because the fog created the illusion of distance between them and their future. But destiny is not far. It is the fog that made it feel far. Purpose is not missing. It is the haze that made it invisible. Your breakthrough is not delayed. It is the atmosphere that blurred your sight of it. And once the fog clears, you will realize that what you were waiting for was always closer than you imagined. Tonight marks the end of spiritual misdirection, the end of uncertainty, the end of wandering seasons, the end of hesitation, the end of blurred revelation, the end of unclear assignment, the end of noisy atmospheres, the end of invisible barriers. Light is rising, clarity is coming, the wind of God is blowing, and your spirit is about to see with the precision it was designed for. There are breakthroughs that require sight before they require strength, because it is vision that shows you where to place your strength. When clarity returns, wasted energy stops. Wrong battles cease. Misplaced efforts end. You begin to invest in what matters. You stop pouring into empty places. You stop fighting shadows. You stop pursuing what drains you. Fog made you scatter your strength. Clarity gathers your strength back into alignment. The enemy knows that a person with clear vision becomes unstoppable. This is why the fog often comes right before elevation, before a promotion, before a transition, before the unveiling of a new season. Fog rises when you are closest to clarity. Darkness settles when you are close to light. Confusion increases when you are approaching revelation. The enemy distorts your vision to make you abandon the threshold of transformation. But tonight, you will not turn back. You will not slow down. You will not misinterpret this moment. The fog failed. There are decisions you have been postponing because the fog made them feel risky. You delayed movements that heaven already approved. You held back from opportunities God secured for you. You questioned directions that were meant to propel you forward. You hesitated on assignments that carried your breakthrough. Fog breeds reluctance. Fog breeds fear. Fog breeds caution in moments where boldness is required. But tonight, that atmosphere is broken. You will move with divine courage. There are seasons in life where God allows fog, so you learn to recognize his voice, even when visibility is low. Because true discernment does not depend on sight. It depends on sensitivity. When the fog settles and you can still hear God, still sense his tug, still feel his direction, that is how spiritual maturity grows. But once that maturity is formed, the fog lifts, and the voice of God that trained you in darkness will guide you powerfully in the light. Fog also interferes with destiny connections. Helpers pass you by because you cannot recognize them. Opportunities knock, but you hesitate because you cannot see their purpose. Divine alignments appear, but the haze makes them look ordinary. The right people feel distant, The wrong people feel safe. Fog disrupts relational discernment. But tonight, every destiny connection assigned by God to your lifting will be illuminated. You will identify them with accuracy. There are fogs that come from battles you did not fight, but inherited. Fogs that have hovered over families for generations. Fogs that affect decision-making. Fogs that distort perception. Fogs that create patterns of misdirection. You watch entire bloodlines wander through life without clarity. You see generation after generation struggle with misplaced priorities, wrong relationships, and delayed purpose. This is not coincidence. This is inherited spiritual obscurity. But tonight, that generational haze is clearing over you. The fog tried to make you settle. When visibility is low, people adapt to smaller dreams. They lower expectations. They shrink their vision. They choose safety over destiny. They choose patterns over purpose. Fog convinces you to live beneath your potential because it hides your true assignment. But once the haze lifts, your inner ambition awakens again. The fire returns. The passion rises. The desire to pursue the fullness of God's plan ignites. And tonight, that inner fire is returning to you. Fog creates delay without walls. You walk slower without knowing why. You hesitate without knowing the reason. You avoid movement without understanding the cause. You feel blocked without any visible obstacle. That is the trick of atmospheric attacks. The delay feels psychological, but its root is spiritual. And when the fog lifts, the pace of your life accelerates. Steps become lighter. Processes become faster. Doors open quicker. You reclaim lost time. You recover lost momentum. Tonight begins that recovery. There are people who thought they were under attack, but they were actually under a veil. They felt heaviness, but could not identify the source. They felt confusion, but could not trace its origin. They felt distant from God, but could not explain the shift. Fog hides the root of warfare. But when clarity comes, you suddenly understand who, what, and where the interference came from. And tonight, every root is being exposed. The fog tried to make you depend on human advice. You started seeking confirmation from people instead of guidance from God. You began asking for direction from voices that could not see your destiny. You relied on counsel that was not birthed from the Spirit. Fog redirects dependence. But tonight, God is returning your hearing. Your inner compass is awakening. Your spiritual appetite is sharpening. You will no longer need external voices to explain what God is already speaking within you. When the fog clears, purpose becomes loud. You feel it when you wake up. You feel it throughout the day. You feel it when you pray. You feel it when you think. You begin to sense the direction of your next season with undeniable intensity. You no longer guess. You no longer waver. You no longer second-guess your assignment. The path becomes clear, and clarity births confidence. There are breakthroughs that cannot manifest until your spiritual visibility is restored. Because destiny requires sight, purpose requires direction, assignment requires clarity. Without spiritual visibility, even divine opportunities feel dangerous, and even God-ordained seasons feel uncertain. The fog was not attacking your blessing. It was attacking your ability to recognize the blessing. Once that recognition returns, your life shifts instantly. And tonight, that recognition is awakening with fire. Fog also weakens spiritual alertness. You stop noticing subtle warnings. You overlook spiritual red flags. You ignore internal alarms. You misread atmospheres. You sense danger but cannot interpret it. The enemy takes advantage of this dullness, planting traps in places you could normally discern. But when the fog lifts, your alertness returns sharply. You begin to sense danger before it forms. You notice spiritual shifts before others do. Your perception becomes heightened again. That sharpening begins tonight. The enemy used fog to make you question your calling. You doubted your assignment. You questioned your purpose. You wondered whether you heard God correctly. Fog makes divine instructions feel uncertain, causing confusion in seasons that require obedience. But tonight, the haze is lifting from your identity. You will no longer question who you are. You will no longer question what God told you. You will no longer question the direction He is pulling you toward. Clarity is returning to your calling. Some fogs come to make you tolerate what you were meant to break. You began to accept delays as normal. You began to accept confusion as your condition. You began to accept stagnation as your story. You began to accept spiritual dryness as your new state. Fog normalizes dysfunction. But when clarity comes, you suddenly recognize what you should never have tolerated. You begin to rise against what you once allowed. You begin to confront what you once endured. Tonight, your inner warrior is awakening. There are fogs that settle after emotional wounds. Pain can create a haze around perspective. Hurt can blur vision. Trauma can cloud discernment. You begin to interpret the world through wounds. You begin to see life through the lens of past pain. You become cautious where you should be confident. You become fearful where you should be bold. Fog born from emotional wounds is subtle but powerful. And tonight, that emotional haze is being cleared. Healing is restoring your sight. Fog interferes with spiritual hunger. When the haze thickens, prayer feels heavy, worship feels distant, and revelation feels unreachable. You begin to think you are spiritually weak, when in reality the fog is suffocating your appetite. But as the wind of God moves, hunger returns, desire returns, passion returns. You begin to seek God with the fire that once defined you. You begin to feel his presence without resistance. The fog lifted and hunger awakened. That awakening starts tonight. There are fogs that come when you are about to break into a new dimension. Every elevation requires new sight. Every transition requires fresh visibility. Every spiritual promotion requires upgraded discernment. So before God shifts you, the enemy sends fog to make you misstep. The haze is meant to break your rhythm. But once you recognize the tactic, the fog loses its power. And tonight, you are recognizing it. You will not misstep. You will not be delayed. You will not be misled. Your elevation is intact. Fog also attacks creativity and inspiration. Ideas become faint. Vision becomes dull. Focus becomes scattered. Dreams feel distant. The motivation to build weakens. The passion to pursue your assignment becomes muted. Fog tries to suffocate destiny expression. But once clarity returns, inspiration flows like a river. Creativity unlocks. Ideas pour out. Insight multiplies. You begin to build with strength. Tonight, your creative clarity is returning. There are fogs that are not sent by the enemy but allowed by God. He lets visibility drop so you learn to walk by conviction, not comfort. To learn trust beyond sight. To grow faith that is not dependent on signs. But these seasons do not last forever. Once faith is matured, God clears the haze so you can move with confidence into your next level. And for you, that time has come. When the fog lifts, even your physical environment feels different. The heaviness leaves, the atmosphere lightens, peace settles, your mind feels clearer, your heart feels steadier. You begin to make decisions with renewed calm. That shift is not emotional, it is spiritual. God is clearing the air around you. Tonight, your eyes are being anointed to see beyond what the natural eye can reveal. You are stepping into a season where nothing will be able to hide from your spirit. Deception will fail. Distractions will be exposed. Wrong voices will lose influence. Misty atmospheres will disperse. You are entering clarity, visibility, precision, and divine direction. There are destinies that shift dramatically the moment clarity returns. You begin to understand why certain seasons were difficult. You begin to see why certain people were removed. You begin to discern why certain opportunities were blocked. Fog hides the divine logic behind your journey. But when the haze clears, everything suddenly makes sense. What once felt like delay now looks like protection. What once felt like silence now appears as preparation. What once felt confusing now reveals its purpose. Clarity interprets seasons that pain once distorted. Fog also affects your memory of what God has already spoken. You forget promises. You forget dreams. You forget instructions. You forget warnings. You forget revelations that once shaped you. Fog creates spiritual amnesia. It disconnects you from what God deposited in your spirit. But once clarity returns, your memory awakens. Words God spoke years ago resurface. Prophetic instructions become loud again. Dreams you abandoned return with intensity. You remember who you are. You remember what God told you. You remember why the battle was fierce. And tonight, your spiritual memory is being restored. There are fogs stirred by comparison. When you begin to look at the journey of others, your own direction becomes blurred. Comparison introduces haze because it shifts your focus from God's timeline to human timelines. You begin to feel behind. You begin to feel inadequate. You begin to feel lost, not because your path is unclear, but because your attention wandered. Fog follows distraction. But when clarity returns, your focus realigns. You stop measuring your journey by someone else's pace. You embrace your own lane. You honor your own timeline. Tonight, that realignment begins. Some fogs come as a reaction to your rising. The more you advance, the more the enemy attempts to blur your sight. He wants you to enter elevation blindly. He wants you to walk into new seasons without discernment. He wants you to step into opportunities without spiritual awareness. That way, he can plant sabotage where you least expect it. But tonight, your rising will not be blind. Your elevation will not be fogged. Every step you take will be guided by divine visibility. Fog can also be triggered by exhaustion. When your spirit becomes tired, your sight becomes dim. Discouragement creates haze. Weariness creates blur. Fatigue creates distortion. This is why the enemy fights your rest. This is why he drains your energy. This is why he fills your days with unnecessary battles. Because if he can weary your spirit, he can fog your vision. But tonight, the breath of God is renewing your strength. Your spirit is being refreshed. Your inner clarity is regaining power. There are fogs that hide your own greatness from you. You begin to underestimate yourself. You begin to feel unqualified for what God called you to do. You begin to shrink when you should stand tall. Fog makes you see yourself through limitation rather than grace. It distorts your identity. But when the haze lifts, you remember that you were chosen. You remember that you were equipped. You remember that you were anointed. Your confidence is not arrogance, it is clarity. And tonight, that identity clarity is returning to you. Fog interferes with your ability to hear instructions precisely. The voice of God does not disappear, but it becomes faint through the haze. You hear parts, but not the whole. You sense direction, but not detail. You receive revelation, but without structure. Fog fragments divine communication. But once the clarity returns, the voice that seemed distant becomes loud again. Instructions become specific. Revelation becomes complete. The whisper becomes a command. Tonight, the voice of God is coming back into focus for you. There are steps you have been afraid to take because the fog made the future look threatening. But once clarity comes, you realize the path ahead is not dangerous. It is destined. The place that looked risky becomes the place of breakthrough. The door that looked uncertain becomes the door of elevation. The journey that looked intimidating becomes the journey of fulfillment. Fog lied. Clarity tells the truth. And tonight, truth is illuminating your path. When the fog lifts, you begin to see who was standing with you and who was standing against you. Hidden agendas become visible. Secret conversations become exposed. Silent sabotages become revealed. Fog protected pretenders. Fog shielded manipulators. Fog covered the hands of those who slowed you down. But when the atmosphere clears, every identity is revealed. You will no longer walk with people who dim your vision. You will no longer trust voices that confuse your spirit. The fog is lifting, and truth is standing uncovered. Some fogs are created by unfinished seasons. When you stay in a place longer than God intended, clarity dims. The atmosphere becomes heavy. Movement becomes slow. Discernment becomes dull. Staying beyond your season invites fog because purpose resists stagnation. But when God is ready to shift you, he clears the haze so you can see where to go next. That shift is happening tonight. There are fogs that come to challenge your ability to recognize spiritual seasons. When the haze settles, you cannot tell when a season is opening or closing. You cannot discern when to step out or when to remain still. You cannot identify when a cycle is ending or when a new phase is beginning. Fog interrupts season awareness. But when clarity returns, you become sensitive to divine. You begin to feel when a door is about to open. You begin to sense when a chapter is closing. You begin to understand when to shift and when to stay. Tonight, that seasonal sensitivity is returning to you. Fog also interrupts divine alignment. It causes you to be in the right place at the wrong time, or the wrong place at the right time. You miss moments not because they were never yours, but because visibility was blocked. You struggle to cooperate with God's timing because your internal compass was clouded. But when the fog lifts, alignment becomes effortless. Grace flows smoothly. Doors open naturally. Divine opportunities meet you at the perfect moment. And tonight, alignment is being restored. Some fogs attach themselves to your thoughts. You begin to overthink simple decisions. You begin to analyze small things excessively. You begin to fear making mistakes. You begin to doubt your ability to hear God. This mental overactivity is not normal. It is fog in the mind. It is an attack on clarity, meant to paralyze your action. But the power of that mental fog breaks tonight. Your thoughts will settle. Your mind will quiet. Your decisions will become clear again. Fog can also be caused by spiritual stagnation. When you stop growing, vision becomes blurry. When revelation stops flowing, direction becomes dim. When spiritual hunger fades, discernment weakens. Stagnation attracts haze. But when the Spirit of God stirs you again, the atmosphere begins to shift. Tonight, your hunger is awakening. Your spirit is being stirred. Your growth is being rekindled. The stagnation is breaking, and with it, the fog is lifting. There are fogs designed to disconnect you from your divine helpers. You begin to misinterpret those assigned to assist you. You become suspicious of people who carry your blessing. You feel disconnected from those who are meant to elevate you. The fog confuses your relational discernment so that you either reject the right people or embrace the wrong one. But when the haze lifts, divine connections will become unmistakably clear. The people God sent will stand out sharply. And tonight, that clarity is restoring your relationships. Fog also hides the enemy's plans. You sense opposition, but you cannot identify its form. You feel pressure, but you cannot trace its source. You feel watched, but you cannot see who is monitoring. You feel resistance, but you cannot point to the root. Fog protects the operations of darkness. But when the wind of God comes, the enemy's cover is removed. Hidden agendas are exposed. Silent schemes are revealed. Every plan working behind the scenes becomes visible. Tonight, that exposure begins. Fog disrupts the clarity of your emotions. You begin to react strongly to small things. You begin to feel overwhelmed by simple decisions. You begin to experience mood shifts without cause. You begin to battle inattention for no reason. Emotional fog is a real attack, not from your heart, but from atmospheric interference. But tonight, emotional clarity is returning. Peace is settling. Stability is rising. Calmness is being restored. The heaviness that clouded your emotions is lifting now. Some fogs come simply to waste your time. You move in circles while thinking you are progressing. You repeat old mistakes. You revisit old seasons. You reconnect with old patterns. You return to places you outgrew. Fog creates cycles of delay without obvious obstacles. But once the haze clears, you will break out of every cycle. You will move forward for real. You will accelerate without resistance. Tonight, those cycles end. Fog can also hide the next step of your destiny. You see the big picture, but not the next instruction. You know where you must go, but not how to start. You sense your purpose, but the path looks dim. This is one of the enemy's strongest tactics, to block the step that leads to the promise. But the wind of clarity is blowing tonight. The next step will become visible. The next instruction will be unmistakable. The next move will come with conviction. You will not wander in circles again. Fog interferes with the spirit of discernment by suppressing spiritual intuition. You feel something is off, but cannot interpret it. You sense something is coming, but cannot define it. You know there is warfare, but cannot see the target. This interruption leaves you vulnerable. But once clarity comes, your spiritual instincts reignite. You sense danger early. You recognize blessings quickly. You identify traps instantly. Tonight, Your spiritual instincts are returning with fire. Fog also manipulates identity. You begin to feel smaller than your assignment. You begin to question your capacity. You begin to minimize your potential. Fog makes you adjust your life to match a distorted view of yourself. But when the haze lifts, the truth becomes undeniable. You begin to see yourself through God's eyes again. You begin to walk with authority. You begin to embrace your calling boldly. Tonight, that restoration of identity is taking place. There are fogs that target the voice of purpose within you. When the haze thickens, your inner conviction becomes quiet. You stop feeling that pull that once guided you. You stop sensing the urgency that once moved you. You stop hearing the gentle direction that once shaped every decision. Fog tries to silence the voice that keeps you aligned with destiny. But when clarity returns, that inner voice rises again with strength. You feel purpose waking inside you. You sense direction stirring again. Tonight, that voice is returning to full volume. Fog interferes with gratitude. When visibility is low, you struggle to see blessings. You overlook progress. You forget answered prayers. You feel disconnected from the goodness of God. Fog makes lack look bigger than abundance. It makes problems look larger than breakthroughs. It blinds you to what God is already doing. But when clarity comes, gratitude awakens. You begin to see blessings everywhere. You begin to notice grace in small details. You begin to appreciate the steps you once ignored. Tonight, gratitude will rise from clarity. There are fogs that distort your ability to recognize spiritual warfare. You sense pressure but misinterpret its purpose. You feel resistance but cannot decode its direction. Fog makes attacks seem random when they are actually strategic. But when clarity returns, the patterns of warfare become visible. You recognize where the battle is coming from. You identify why the attack came. You understand what the enemy fears about you. That understanding is rising tonight. Fog also hides pathways of escape. You feel trapped even when God has opened a way out. You feel cornered even when the door is unlocked. You feel surrounded even when the exit is clear. Fog creates the illusion of entrapment. But when clarity comes, you realize you were never stuck. Visibility was. Tonight, every hidden escape route will appear before you. Some fogs attack your spiritual confidence. You begin to doubt your ability to pray with authority. You begin to question whether your words carry weight. You begin to feel unworthy to fight spiritually. Fog weakens confidence by making you forget who backs you. But once the haze lifts, confidence returns like fire. You remember who sent you. You remember who stands with you. You remember who fights for you. Tonight, confidence is being restored. Fog can also mask divine warnings. You walk into situations without caution because the haze made danger look harmless. You connect with people whose intentions you cannot see clearly. You make decisions without sensing the risk. Fog hides the spiritual red lights. But when clarity comes, warnings become sharp. You recognize danger instantly. You avoid traps that once looked safe. You step away from what carries hidden destruction. Tonight, warnings will be loud and clear. Fog manipulates expectations. When visibility is low, hope becomes small. You begin to expect little from life. You lower the standard of what you believe God can do. You shrink your prayers. You minimize your faith. Fog compresses expectation until you believe for just enough instead of more than enough. But once clarity returns, expectation rises again. Your prayers expand. Your faith enlarges. Your vision grows. Tonight, expectation is being stretched back to divine size. There are fogs that slow your spiritual acceleration. You were meant to run, but the haze forced you to crawl. You were meant to soar, but the blur kept you grounded. You were meant to progress quickly, but the fog made you cautious. Fog steals momentum. But tonight, momentum is returning with force. Your steps will increase. Your pace will quicken. Your movement will become unstoppable. Fog often comes before revelation. The enemy tries to dim your sight because something is about to be revealed. Attacks increase, not because you are losing, but because you are about to see clearly. The enemy fears what you will do once your eyes open. He fears what you will break once you recognize it. He fears what you will build once you understand it. That is why the fog was heavy, but revelation is rising. Tonight, the unseen becomes visible. Some fogs were simply distractions, noise sent to pull you away from your assignment. But now that clarity is coming, distraction is losing its grip. What once consumed your attention will lose its power. What once drained your focus will fade. What once stole your energy will weaken. You will begin to focus with intensity. You will pursue purpose without interference. Tonight marks the end of distraction. Fog also blinds you to your own growth. You think you are stagnant when you are evolving. You think you are stuck when God is building you. You think you are slow when heaven is restructuring your steps. Fog hides development. But when clarity comes, you will see how far God has taken you. You will see how strong you have become. You will see the maturity you gained through battles. That realization is coming tonight. Fog tries to make you feel behind, but clarity reveals you are right on time. Fog whispers delay, but clarity shows preparation. Fog says you are lost, but clarity proves you are aligned. Fog lies, clarity tells the truth. Tonight, truth is overshadowing every lie spoken over your destiny. There are fogs that target your future by blinding your present. When visibility is low, you cannot see the value of what God is doing in you now. You overlook training that is preparing you. You ignore lessons designed to strengthen you. You misinterpret divine shaping as stagnation. Fog blinds you to the purpose of the present season. But when clarity returns, you finally understand why God moved the way he did. You recognize why certain doors closed. You realize why some relationships ended. You see how every step was leading you forward. Tonight, that understanding is awakening within you. Fog interferes with your ability to interpret spiritual signs. God sends signals, but the haze distorts them. You dream dreams, but struggle to understand their meaning. You feel nudges in your spirit, but cannot decode them. You sense shifts, but cannot explain them. Fog tries to disconnect you from prophetic awareness. But when clarity returns, signs become readable. Dreams become clear. Insights become sharp. The language of the spirit becomes loud again. Tonight, your prophetic sensitivity is being restored. There are fogs that confuse transitions. You begin to feel the urge to move, but the direction is unclear. You sense the season is changing, but you do not know where to step next. You feel pulled away from the old, yet cannot see the new. Fog is the enemy's final attempt to trap you in outdated seasons. But when clarity comes, the new path becomes visible. You suddenly know where to go, when to go, and how to go. The confusion breaks. The direction becomes unmistakable. Tonight, your transition will be guided by divine visibility. Fog also hides the magnitude of your calling. You see yourself through the lens of limitation, rather than through the lens of assignment. Fog shrinks your spiritual stature. It makes you feel unprepared for responsibilities you were born for. But when clarity returns, you feel your calling rise like a giant within you. You see the weight of your destiny. You feel the urgency of your purpose. You embrace the magnitude of what God placed in your hands. Tonight, that spiritual awakening begins. Some fogs come to distract you from the voice of destiny that has been calling your name since birth. Every time you get close to breakthrough, the haze thickens. Every time you are near alignment, the mist rises. Every time you step forward, the atmosphere blurs. This is not coincidence. It is a coordinated strategy to keep you from recognizing the moment heaven has prepared for you. But tonight, that strategy collapses. The fog loses its hold. Your destiny becomes visible again. Fog hides identity. Fog hides direction. Fog hides purpose. Fog hides truth. Fog hides opportunities. Fog hides relationships. Fog hides revelation. Fog hides the enemy's traps. Fog hides God's movement. Fog hides the next step. But when the wind of God blows, everything hidden is unveiled. Everything blurred becomes sharp. Everything dim becomes bright. Everything confusing becomes clear. Tonight, the wind is blowing over your destiny. You are entering a season where you will no longer walk by guesswork, no longer walk by fear, no longer walk by confusion, no longer walk by hesitation. The fog that clouded your path is clearing. The haze that blinded your discernment is lifting. The heaviness that dimmed your vision is breaking. The atmosphere around your life is shifting. What you could not see, you will now see. What you could not discern, you will now discern. What you could not interpret, you will now understand. Tonight is your night of clarity. The fog that once slowed you will become the testimony that strengthens you. You will look back and realize that the haze was the last battle before breakthrough, the last interference before elevation, the last confusion before revelation, the last delay before release. Tonight marks the end of fog and the beginning of prophetic visibility. Light is rising over your destiny. The air is clearing. Your eyes are opening. Your path is shining brighter than ever before. Tonight, every atmospheric haze that settled upon your spirit is being scattered by the breath of God. Every fog that distorted your vision is dissolving. Every veil that covered your destiny is lifting. The wind of heaven is clearing the air around your life. You will walk with precision. You will move with confidence. You will hear with clarity. You will see with spiritual accuracy. No more wandering. No more misdirection. No more hesitation. No more blurred seasons. No more silent confusion. No more invisible barriers. Your eyes are returning to full spiritual visibility. Welcome to a season where your path is bright, your steps are ordered, your discernment is sharp, and your destiny is undeniable. Walk boldly. Walk with revelation. Walk with clarity. This is your everlasting solution.